What if eternity is hiding behind your eyes? Welcome to tonight's episode, everyone. The title is The Eternal Cause of a Temporal Effect. And so, if this concept was a treasure in front of us, how would we unravel it? How would we explain reality to ourselves that justifies our knowledge beyond the unknown? Pretty much all I can share is my views on this, like my reality. But I can tell you that the concept of eternity was an empty concept for me most of my life. Not most of my life, but in my youth. Because for me, it was all about trying to not be late. I could tell you, like, most of my life went to that sort of dynamic of perception, where time was in some sense the chain around my neck pulling me because the responsibility of the world had to keep up with its survival. Then after billions of years have evolved to this point, do you think, like, Da Vinci thought, like, our, like, generations of human beings being born after him were all just gonna go in offices and work? Or did he wonder about the creative potential of the species? And for now, the idea is that we have been so materialistically oriented, as if, like, I'm just looking at, like, all these creatures on this planet, me included, and I'm looking at, like, 8 billion human beings, and I'm like, what is happening to the value of their lifetime? And so for me, it was like as if like this strange wave of sadness hit me, because it was as if I saw many wasted lives, many human beings just, in some sense, waking up in the day and living for only their own ideas. What that means is that there are two worlds we stand in this current moment. There's two worlds we're standing in. One is the objective world which you cannot hide and do not be, in some sense, too proud or ashamed of your form as a life form. But the life part of you, as this creature of formation that is dependent on information, let me tell you, as you notice your feet upon this earth, like even right now, just feel your feet on the ground. There is another way you're standing currently, which is your subjective existence to yourself. It is kept in the lantern, in the flame of your attention. That means the people on this planet have not understood that the idea of a person is the cocoon, and the caterpillar is not meant to stay in the cocoon. The caterpillar is meant to go through a sense of annihilation of the past for the future to arrive. A lot of our life is a relationship with how we have, in some sense, accepted words as reality. Once you understand this, you have to be mindful of this, and you have to reach a point before, like, anybody who's, like, interested in what I'm saying, like, guys, all I'm saying is, like, you gotta realize the whole point of this existence is self-awareness. And in your self-awareness, once you have attained the highest responsibility, the greatest thing you could experience as an individual, then the wondrous curiosity of your collective existence will come to you. And your collective existence can be in two modalities. That means if somebody goes out there and says like, okay, if somehow the universe was able to generate individually conscious creatures, perhaps it was also able to generate collective creatures, as if like many bodies, one mind, something like that. Now, to my surprise, I there was a collective being. Hear me out here. There was a collective being, this like disembodied creature that I had been seeing since my childhood, which I had never noticed. And it was the linguistic realm. How words and their movement and your attention through them generates the story of life beyond words. You see, for me, the first thing that children must be taught is how to write and how to read. Because those are the most crucial things. You have to be able to receive and express. Once you begin to, in some sense, cultivate these aspects of self, the aspect of yourself that throughout the day things are, in some sense, happening to it, and how throughout the day there are things that yourself is doing to others. I had a very unbelievable experience today, you know. Like I decided to eat fast food, right? For some reason. And I went in, as I went to this fast food place, I got extra sandwiches. They had like a deal. I got these extra sandwiches and I went out on the street of like downtown Toronto near the Dundas area. And I just gave like two random, like what seemed like homeless people, like two burgers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so what happened is the first guy was a guy who was frozen, and you could say he had nothing, like it was as if he had nowhere to go. He was just trying to stay conscious. Do you see the responsibility of our society can be acknowledged in an enlightened fashion, in the sense that the expectation of the people is the pride of the society, not the something to fight, not something to control. If you notice, the moment you control something, you have done yourself a disservice, because you have chained yourself to that which you have wanted to control. And this has been a law hidden in front of the eyes of mankind. Because to want to control something means your attention doesn't want to move onto the new. The eternal cause of a temporal effect is like pretty much what excites me. Like I've been like I've been playing with language for a while, you know, like on this earth, and I could tell you that for me the unknown becomes the greatest joy. I could totally understand that, like, you could say something very unique was happening to Christopher Columbus when he, like, this human, out of all the human beings in that town and how they behaved, this one creature behaved differently. As if, imagine, out of a kingdom of different species of apes, suddenly one of them was like, I want to go to the moon. And its ambition was evolved by where its previous generation or the previous consciousness of its DNA was, in some sense, intending upon. Sometimes this is something that I don't think any sort of modern metaphysics has touched upon. That when you study yourself and all this stuff that I'm saying, like what you come into the conclusion is that you're starting off in your own world. So listen to what I'm saying here. You have to polish, and you have to, in some sense, poetically and playfully, at the same time, extremely seriously, like update your attention. And like, it's as if, like, think of it this way. A person does some activities, like, I'm bored, does another activity, I'm bored, and the whole time that person is just seeking different images to look at. As if we can say consciousness is this bewildered image-seeking phenomenon. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to get to is, in some sense, you gotta first study your, you gotta like you gotta see yourself in the simplest ways of your existence to be able to handle the complexity, or you will fear it. Because trust me, language, because it came out of nowhere, the ultimate revelations of any stories ever written is in some sense the unknown behind the singularity of allowance for existence to be classified. To be when I say classified, to be segmented. Like when we speak about the world, we're not speaking about the whole world. We are using chunks of images, and so this is here to say even like how much language can evolve. And language is being polished through the ambitions of an immaterial cause in a material phenomena. As if like, guess what? The matter that's moving in this universal sector, any intelligent phenomena is in some sense a part of your world, and your acceptance of it will suggest your interaction with it. Because for me, a lot of what I feel like when you see in movies or something, the guy's like, something happens, bad happens to his friend, instead of the friend going and saying something like to in some sense raise the minds of the moment, like the friend goes and says like, what does he say? It's like after a loss, kicking someone. You know, it's terrible. But pretty much what I'm trying to say with that metaphor is that like once challenged and questioned, and once you question and challenge your life, the more you will feel okay with the world around you. But the more you choose to own, the more ideas you have to keep in your attention every day. Do you see? And ideas are not things that, like, for me, I have a very like mystical relationship with my mind, as if my body is walking in a world of attention that is my whole moment, not just this 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 aspect of it. You know, we have not studied ourselves well enough. The children of mankind, in some sense, have not understood the value of a kind man, of a kind human being, of a kind creature, of a creature that through its compassion and kindness, in some sense, abides by a certain aspect of true existence within itself. Once you have a moment of actually you feel like you are you and the world is here, like once you, instead of like, think of it this way, I don't believe logic should be the precursor to belief. I believe that we are a natural being, right? Like you don't sit down controlling and planning for weeks like how your hair is gonna grow, you know. Like it occurs naturally. You see? And so when it comes to the study of the expressions of nature, you cannot avoid nature's laws. But at the same time, you're not just in nature's laws. Because what we consider to be nature is still a separation. And deeper spirituality is non conceptual. And it's something that nobody says because it is in the realm of experience. And it's not something fancy, too. It's not like, oh man, we're in the wrong room, the party's like in heaven, we all have to go to heaven. You know, it's not like that. You have to respect your truth because your truth is the centerpiece of your story of life. And your truth starts off being a natural, playful sense of freedom in this world until the suffering of the world begins to, in some sense, throw mud at you. And so realize, like, eventually, if you think of it this way, like, you know how, like, in the movie Transformers, like, the car could transform into a robot? Like a four-wheeled, like horse-powered kind of thing could suddenly transform to like a, you know, beast-killing machine. So for me, I'm saying like there is a sort of transformation with human experience in the sense that your beliefs are orchestrating, or in some sense being the filter of your next moment. So to experience a pure moment is a moment where there's a sense of a pure observance of thought, a sense of pure, as if like you begin noticing the natural aspects of yourself. You begin becoming spatially oriented, not to the thoughts you have on your environment and how much you can analyze in your environment, by how much you can dance with the environment. What that means is you recognize how value is moving. You, in some sense, find the eyes of God within you and you march endlessly towards the vision that is the opportunity of once in a lifetime. As I don't remember who the poet is, but a very great, I believe, European poet has said, "Do not go," or maybe he's American, I don't know. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of your life. You, in some sense, a suggestion that your eyes are open once every day. And how are you choosing to stand in a world of your own creation, in a world where you look at phenomena and ascribe values without even sometimes realizing the views of other human beings? Because I'll be honest, like the world has been sold too happy. They've sold too much of a happy story to the kids, so none of them care. You know, that's the problem with a utopia. Nobody cares for anything anymore because there's no consequence. That means the value of society, in some sense, at a pure utopia level, is nothing. It's just like a sort of torture of creatures walking in like just complete solutions all the time. Sometimes for me, a problem is like just getting some fresh air. And sometimes when you look very deeply in the mirror, you don't just notice your biological eyes, and you don't just notice the way your physical design is. You notice the design of an attention with that is looking out through your eyes. I say looking out because we have to, in some sense, animate poetry because there's a war of language going on. You know, it's as if like when superstition was um, asked if it could participate in the war of intellect. The kings of intellect looked at the kings of superstition and they said, every man counts. And what I mean by that is that there requires to be like, you'll realize it. It's like the pure primal desire of our species. It's in everybody's heartbeat. It is something that once you realize the value of life, you realize the value of form. You realize how all of knowledge has a form. Ladies and gentlemen, your educational system is a system of symbology. A symbology that, in some sense, you are ascribing from your experiences of worlds of meaning into and accepting. And it's not that it's wrong. I mean, like, that's kind of language. But for me, if we are a creature beyond stories, that means like nobody could come and tell a story that was convincing enough for you to be like, okay, I'm gonna believe that for the rest of my life. You know, sometimes you gotta tell people to calm down. You know, like there should be like, you know how there's speed limits. You know, in certain parts of neighborhoods, I think we should care for the minds of people and also care for the freedom of their minds, which could, in some sense, lead to innovation that could help all of us. So for me, society is becoming one of those things where it's the show off of the gifts. That means it's as if like the barbaric era has ended. A sort of creative output of our expression has arisen, as if we have taken the violence of the world slowly. Like I'm noticing this as the future generations, as kids are being born, I on some level they get depressed quicker, but on some level they know they see a sinking ship and they let it go, and that's a blessing of the future generations. And sometimes in those sinking ship in those sinking ships there are good ideas. Sometimes my past, like I'll give you an example. Like for me, I don't experience time chronologically anymore because for me it's as if all expression has a momentary value and awareness. And in this momentary value, layers of abstract sophistication in some sense begin, um, as if like the hands of the unknown begin sculpting knowledge, as if you self-inquiring and just looking at your life as an honest being, and just look at your life, look at the design that existence has granted you. And then instead of being stuck in the past or in the future, that means either um, just reveal the secrets of your attention and you have lived a good life then. War can instantly end on this planet when men realize they were never blind. They were just various thoughts that the species momentum generated. As if we can say our species has a collective mind. And like, for example, Adolf Hitler was a bad idea this mind generated. And for example, Nikola Tesla was a good idea this mind generated. And the notion of a mind is a notion of a subtle collective existence which is at the same time a simultaneity and an infinity. Second, just entertain the idea I'm saying. You don't have to accept or do anything with it. Just I'm saying like look at what you consider is temporary and ask yourself, how do I know the edge of the mind? And you will see the edge of the mind is actually too dark to see. And the mind is a world of, as if one tunneling experiencer um, taking mementos from different life experiences, as if your memories are not just what you record, they are how your spirit moves in manifestation. And for me, intelligence is not just living in a sad story, not knowing what it was all about. For me, it's like one of those things where it's like, you know, you either go in or you, in some sense, are pushed in. Like life is one of those things. That's the thing about time. That means many men can try to outlast time, but there is no power source that will maintain it forever. We must. The whole thing is we got to return to a natural way of living, and a natural way of living is a way of living before your sense of who you are as a person was sculpted and shaped into certain patterns of behavioral acceptance. The simple lesson is learn from all moments of your existence, but don't learn like a fool. Learn as if you've known it before. Travel in the unknown as if from the known you have already acknowledged the unknown. Don't go into the unknown with a sort of superiority because it doesn't matter. See, I'm speaking to you, dear listeners, whoever's listening. You are a pilot of consciousness. You're an advanced communicator. You just haven't understood. Um, Not that you haven't understood. You're standing under the wrong views, and so you got to pull the curtain of your past, and you got to enter the final stage. When a sense of serenity arises in the being, and by serenity I mean this is levels beyond peace. So most people feel like a peaceful person is enlightened. And I believe a peaceful person is, because they've understood something much more simpler than the complex and the cruel can understand. As all stories evaporate like snow in the melting, like melting, in the sun's light, in the grand presence of an honest vision, your dishonesty breaks. Guilt suddenly gives the steering wheel to some other aspect of your intelligence. I find the body, the biological body, is preserved by an spherical, subjective atmosphere, as if we don't realize what our thoughts, on some level, cannot be destroyed until, like, how can I tell you, a design that comes into existence is never forgotten. And you would say forgotten by who? I would say the word who would not exist at that point. Don't think you're just an individual being. And imagine, like, I don't know, maybe like, let's give it like an estimate of 500, in 550 years, imagine like the members of the human species are also members of, like, the AI computer. I don't know. Like, I feel like that everything that we reject in nature, we subconsciously seek to find in technology. We recognize we're mortal creatures in nature, so we want to, in some sense, build systems that can preserve our life. For me, life at best is a performance. At worst, was a, in some sense, good show. Human beings are not just human beings. They are echoes of a certain energetic design. I remember when I was a kid, I moved this ant in a yard, like when I was like 8 or something, in Iran, like in the backyard of our house, and like I remember seeing a lot of like ants underneath it. And I'm like, before I moved this rock, these ants didn't know. Like they might still not know. But I'm telling you that in some sense, it's not that the seeker finds truth, it's that once the seeker stops trying to do anything, truth finds the seeker to remind it of where it needs to be. Your mind, through a self reflective evolutionary pattern, purifies itself, crystallizes itself. One can say religion was like like suddenly this substance begins to crystallize, and like the first crystal was religion, then science was the second crystal, and eventually it has become a more complex phenomenon, because as language is involved, like, you don't understand the most. If they ask me, like, what's the most greatest technology ever invented on this planet, you know what I would say? I would say language. Without it, there's no world. There's no subjective reality. And when I say there's no subjective reality, it's just like our attachment to the temporary makes us forget our eternal effort. That means it's like some people, like I remember hearing these motivation videos. The guy was like shouting like a, what would you say, like a basketball coach, and he was saying like, The guy was saying like, do you want to succeed or do you not? Like the guy was using the negotiation kind of manner of motivation. And for me, the thing is like, I believe anybody can ask us any question. This is why I believe therapy doesn't work, because anybody can ask you any question, but the questions that you ask yourself, once you see the answer, you act upon. You know what I mean? That means we're like kind of lions. We don't eat. Like, we don't believe other people's um, views because, okay, let me say it like this. When a theist and an atheist are in a debate, and the atheist looks at the theist and says, show me proof of the spirit and God, in some sense, how do I say this? Imagine if the waves of the imagine a moment where the first law of your universe entered, the first shape that you felt was you. You see that, you're in the state of the witness. From that state of the witness, there is no longer any meditation or search or any spiritual elevation. You have hit the rooftop of truth. It's experiential truth in regards to the known and unknown. That means your knowledge has completely been absorbed by the unknown. That means you have nowhere to be aside from the present moment. Then when you are in a sort of natural, humble silence and stillness, when you honor your intelligent expression as a being, your mind begins to release its hidden momentum. As if like one thing human beings didn't realize about creativity is that it's all about your relationship with yourself, which is implying the world of that self. In regards to evidence, one can ask for it objectively, but one validifies it subjectively, and thoughts cannot be seen. I could tell you this too, that when I was younger, I like in my where I lived in Iran, I had a closet in my house where once the way the closet opened, its doors opened from like the inside, they went inward, and it wasn't kind of like it was like this big closet. And then at the same time, the closet wasn't just wood; it was like complete mirrors. And so when you push like these closet doors in, you had two mirrors facing one another, and there was enough like space for like someone to just walk between them. And I remember that was the first time I saw an infinite reflection of myself. I saw like an optical illusion. Like the optical illusion was optically so elusively real. you know? And so that was a moment where the concept, in some sense, I could say the seeds of the concept of an empty infinity arose in me, where I noticed an infinite form, but an empty truth behind it. And so the next sort of kind of infinite reflection in the mirror that I found was the ability of the mind, as like as far as you can go as an individual conceptually, is to a sort of infinite skill level. As if the guy who wanted to be a master, he wanted to attain a mastery beyond the gods. So I'm saying it goes beyond the rooftop of thought. And so if you do have a focus and attention this deeply, if what I'm saying in some sense resonates with you, it's all about just seeing life for what it is with your own eyes. Your eyes are the gift of your lifetime. They are, and your eyes are not just like the third eye is not like an actual eye in like the head. Like I don't know what the hell the New Age community is thinking. It's like too much. You know, sometimes disorder can invite chaos that invites a new order. Think of it this way: a kid grows up in this life thinking he's his thoughts, notices his presence, notices his presence is inseparable. The individual activities that I believe are defining me are inseparable conceptually with the cosmic activity. That means, like, even though I'm here as a person like Mr. Within, you're listening to my podcast at the same time, if we had a galactic perception of this, we would not be identified by our location. Like, because in some sense, how can I say it? Like, who says galactic beings have personalities? Anyways, sometimes when I give these talks, they're like, I have this theory that like we as creatures, our minds are thinking of evolution and the opposite of it as well. And so, because we can see the opposite of evolution, we have the fear of not evolving properly. I think the biggest fear of a social species is not to run with the herd when you have to. Now, this has occurred in a way where, due to life's design, many people fall behind from the herd. And what I mean by that is like right now I'm living in Canada, and there's kids in like countries where the conditions of living are so tragic, as if on some level I shout at the people there, why not move? Why not search around different than in the environments of your misery? There's two ways you get rid of misery. Either you kick it out of your space of awareness, or in some sense, you relocate in a way that the past cannot touch you. You remember the present moment, and all revelation is there, because the truth of your intelligence is there, and the truth of your intelligence is neither an idea nor an emotion, and at best, let yourself experience the smile of a universe. As advanced communicators, which I consider, it's a term I've created, constructed, where I'll tell you like this: you have a responsibility to study your communication and your intelligence in advanced ways, because your communication leads to the essence of your intelligence. The way you exist every day can become so fascinating for you that your sense of awareness, self-awareness, and alertness heighten, and as they heighten, you suddenly your emotions become just the guitar strings of in some sense, the vibrations that a person can experience throughout the day. And most of them are useless. So what I mean by that is that, like, imagine as I'm speaking to you right now, there's Wi-Fi waves going in some sense, you know. So what I mean by that is that electromagnetic waves simultaneously exist in this space. We even have, as creatures, an electromagnetic field of some sort. Our stories, our mind is like the bridge between the unknown and the known. And the known is the body, and the unknown is God or soul or whatever you want to call it. Because believe it or not, it's two directions, and it has always been two directions, and it is honestly getting boring. That our species has either been drawn towards building something or destroying something. There's like no other game to play. A philosopher once woke up and realized he had been asleep. His honorable presence, where thoughts are no longer just being thrown around like a bewildered monkey is throwing like sticks and stuff like around. You gotta tame the animal through the remembrance of a soul that was never an animal, to the realization of a non conceptual presence that all personalities of the moment bow to. And when I say bow to, I'm being like Bhagavad Gita kind of poetic. So I mean like when in ancient hymns they say the gods, the demigods, or in Greek mythology or Vedic mythology, the gods that came to man, that came to earth and spoke to man, spoke to people, they were actually moments where their truths, where the person's truth was no longer distant, it was instantaneously accessible. As if the freedom of mind opened a new perception. And that's why Zen is very brilliant. Just any sort of gentleness towards your towards your mind is important. Cultivate gentleness. There's like some moments where like I'm late for something and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna cultivate gentleness right now, and I just walk gently. You know what I mean? And believe it or not, the outcome's better because a gentle mind enters a room with a different presence. Clarity, wisdom, these are all important words. And I honestly hope every listener to these talks write a library and give it to mankind. Share enough experiences of your honest living that the world can say thank you as you close your eyes from the material domain. For me, I see nothing better to do than to protect the future from the ignorance of now. And the ignorance of now is simply like, I'm like, okay, like, if I had to consider like a sort of like individual approach to like world peace, like, no, you can't go talk to every individual and sign a petition. Can you be peaceful, sir? Can you be peaceful? Like, for me, it's just give everybody a mirror. As if imagine a general has entered like, like where its army is, and just like, yeah, instead of giving weapons to the soldiers, it's giving mirrors. And the general gives them mirrors and tells all the soldiers to instantly look at those mirrors. And so, in that instant, suddenly all the soldiers look at the mirror, and suddenly the general says, for example, now your work is done. Now remember who you were before, but remember who you were as well. Imagine simple freedom, bringing forth complex progress. That's kind of like the way I feel. Maybe it's beneficial to walk that way. Anyways, I hope this talk has served you. I honestly have to start doing this profound meditation called sleep. So, thanks for tuning in. Good night. And I'll say this before I go. It's not what you're looking at that matters. It's what you see. It's not important how you look in the world. It is how much of the world you see. A lifetime passes quickly if you're always trying to get to the future because you feel you've missed it. Every moment is an opportunity of a lifetime. Much blessings and